Hey, thanks for tuning in. We are Living Fit, your trainer's trainer. We not only have education courses for trainers to upgrade their game, but we have full on follow along programs, workouts, exercise breakdowns, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for you to reach your fitness goals. Now, enjoy the show.
What's going on, everybody? Aaron Guyette, Living Fit's Education Director and Master Coach. But enough about me. This is about Dr. Zach Colls. So Dr. Zach Colls, he's a DPT, he's a CSCS, USA weightlifting certification holder. But the education is one thing, the experience. So this guy, NBA, NFL, rehab, recovery, and performance trainer, coach, programmer, right? You name it. Zach, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Pleasure to be on, man. Thank you.
I gave the world's smallest snapshot of what it is that you are and do. Clearly, you're so much more than that. People can check you out at drzachcolls-miami.com. But how did you get into fitness, the fitness industry, and what it is that you're doing?
Yeah, man. So very much it's like many people, like just grew up playing sports, had a passion mainly for baseball, basketball, primarily baseball. So did that throughout high school, went to undergrad, chose the major of exercise science, and then kind of immediately from the get-go was challenged. Our advisor kind of asked all the incoming freshmen who's interested in doing physical therapy, like beyond undergrad, and I would say about 90% of the room to just raise their hand. And she was like, all right, well, congrats. All you guys are going to be competing with each other for like the next 4 years to get into one of the most competitive professions it is out there. So that was already I was already able to, from like a competition standpoint, like relate that to sports. So did undergrad, kind of got my background in strength and conditioning. I already had a small background like prior to it, but that kind of gave me like a more solid base going through all of that in undergrad. Then I transitioned pretty much 7 days after undergrad. I went straight to the physical therapy school at the University of Miami. From there, worked pretty closely with sports, being their XGA. Worked in the training room with the football and baseball teams primarily under the director of rehab there. Started working with a few NFL guys while I was still in school, and then transitioned out of school. Still continue to work with NFL at a private practice. And then probably around the time of COVID is when I transitioned out of that private practice to do my own thing with a partnership at mainly an NBA-driven facility, and started seeing more NBA guys. And then from there, pretty much I got linked to a superstar in the league, and he asked me to come full-time with him. So that's what I do during the NBA season now. I travel full-time with him, focusing primarily on his rehab recovery work, all his pre- and post-court work, or pre- and post-game work as well. And then during the off seasons, I have my practice with my business partner back in Miami, but still I'm kind of like right now currently in LA, just kind of travel all over the place wherever the prep is necessary.
Yeah, and for those that are watching this, I'm sure you're seeing a pretty clean image, a pretty clean audio, but Dr. Zach Colls and I went through the ringer to make sure that this thing happened, and so we're making it happen. So obviously, those are some of our small little first world problems or whatever. So first of all, obviously you're into baseball and basketball, but then you sort of kind of launched into NFL. Like that was kind of one of the footholds that you had. Was that because you came out of those other sports? Was that something that you didn't like or you did like, or what was sort of your take and impression with that?
So basically, when I was working in the training room at a lot of like doing the stuff in there was for the University of Miami stuff, football, like all their training camp stuff, in season, out of season stuff. So I was working pretty closely with that, alongside like obviously they are pretty much underneath the PTs and ATCs in there. So I did that. I did an internship with them as well, and that's where I kind of focused more on baseball. And then through another internship, I worked with a ton of NFL guys there as well. Not with it was outside of And so I got connected to a few guys, and I just pretty much kept working with them beyond that. And then when I got out of school, and when I started working in the private practice, one of the places we would go to for all the combine prep and NFL offseason work was up in Fort Lauderdale. So it was pretty well connected with a number of guys there, a well-known facility at XP Sports. And then pretty much things kind of changed once COVID hit, and that's where the transition to basketball happened, just going into a different facility. There was like some football there, but there's a NBA court like right in the actual facility I functioned in. And there was, again, it was a hub of guys like Miami, Florida, LA, New York, just all those places that are for off seasons. They're kind of destination places for guys to go to. So I kind of just fell right into it. So it's been a passion of mine. Some people hate it. I get why they hate it. Crazy hours, never know. You could be 2 hours late with a guy. That's just the nature of it. But again, if I can't play sports, I knew I didn't have any. I wasn't go pro myself. I might as well just do the closest thing to it, and that just pretty much is doing their training and their rehab and recovery.
Yeah. So what do you find? What's sort of different or similar with doing programming and training with NFL guys versus doing programming and training with NBA guys?
Probably, I mean, even though they're both like super dynamic athletes, high level athletes, programming is very different in season versus off season. NFL guys, like probably load them a lot heavier. It also just depends on the position as well. We've also found like a lot of NFL guys like love being in the weight room, or they'll be in there for hours. NBA guys, I don't say they don't love it, but their passion is typically being on the court. So with them, especially in season, you kind of got to find like the best bang for your buck exercises. So like if you're going to knock out something that say you might have 45 minutes to an hour with someone, if even that's probably max, you just got to find out which exercises are going to like pretty much prep them, still load their tendons, their muscles and everything in season. And so, same thing off season. It's, again, they're usually exhausted. They spend at least an hour on the court, if not more. And that's typically where more their exhaustion comes from. And then just from an injury standpoint, you just got to take in consideration as far as basketball, or playing on hardwood court, always jumping, always running, jumping, cutting. So they're more prone to basically knee pain. Everyone knows like jumper's knee. So typically we aren't going to be loading these guys super, super heavy. Like you're obviously still going to load them heavy, but not quite as much as I will with a football player.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some common scenarios that you would see amongst most basketball players where it's like, hey, I know going into this that I can deliver, big bang for the buck, big benefit with this particular exercise or this particular therapy or this particular, you name it, recovery tool or technique. Do you have any of those that it's like, hey, yeah, these are some of my staples that I just bring with me every time I see my athletes?
Like as far as movement, or as far as like tools, or as far as like what exactly?
Yeah, any and all of that, whether it's a particular movement or exercise, or a particular way of loading a movement or exercise, or even a tool like a SMR or I don't know, you name it. As a DPT, I'm sure you sort of have a laundry list of things that you could choose from, but some of them probably don't have very much bang for the buck, and some of them probably, oh man, this thing every single day, all the time, or whatnot.
Yeah, so I mean, so from like a rehab recovery standpoint, like most other PTs, or I'd say like probably most other PTs, is you have a table with you, Graston or instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization tools, cupping, joint flossing. Also do dry needling too. And if you're not familiar with dry needling, it's like the same needles as acupuncture, with just a little bit different rationale, more so going towards like the trigger point. Those are probably the main things I bring with me anywhere on the road. There's everything. There's game ready, there's boots, but those are just the main things I know that I'm probably going to use on my guys. If they have 10, 20 minutes to 30 minutes like pre-court, probably going to do all that before and a lot of it after. Of course, there's thousands of things that I can name off from my rehab recovery wise. And from a training standpoint, it really just depends on the player. I mean, to give one example, typically with a basketball player, I'm going to probably use a trap bar more than I am going to use like a straight bar. Just again, there's the interest of that type of lifting just really isn't there. It's more applicable from a power standpoint for them to be pulling with a trap bar, where the weight's more centered versus that anterior load. And really just keeping just cognizant in mind is they jump a lot. so they're prone to knee and Achilles pain. I pretty much expect to have knee and Achilles tendinopathy pretty common. So that's a thing I always just take into good consideration. And then another thing is kind of for like just GPP work, the nature of running, jumping, cutting, etc. Your knees are going to go past your toes, so some kind of like split squat, like just pretty much loading like the tendon past the toes. Usually not always super heavy, just like prepping that tendon for the wear and tear of the season. Isometrics, I mean, that's kind of, I feel like those are overlooked, but it's a huge thing for tendinopathies. And that's really, again, I'm always looking for multiplanar work because they work through different planes, but also loading just straight linearly. So it really just depends, time of the year, player, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So when you do, let's zero in on isometrics then. So when you do isometrics, do you do sort of 15-degree, change ups where, if you're trying to get them to load tendon over toe, or are you just, hey, let's find that spot that, is your sticking point, or, all the other things that could, kind of stem from that? Or are you going, okay, let's hit this degree, now let's go 15 degrees further now, or however that might be, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they're completely healthy and they're dealing with that tendinopathy, I mean, if there's a certain range that bothers them, like it's just flaring them up like crazy, I'm obviously not gonna like touch that range like initially. I'm gonna like dab into it, but it's kind of what working through the range. But from a standpoint, someone's healthy and maybe they just know that they're prone to tendinopathy. I just want to prevent it. Well, we'll just work tendinopathies through the entire range. So, and that's open and closed chain. So basic, even just again, sissy squats, isometrics, split squats with like a soleus raise. Again, nothing crazy, but again, it's a very simple example where if I need to get their quad, like Achilles firing at the same time, just put them in the split squat position, putting the knee bend, you get the soleus firing as well. Isometrics for the patella tendon, Achilles tendon, quad tendon, all for one. So that's just an example of something where I want to do XYZ. If I isolated one of these or all three of these, would it be a little bit more ideal? Probably so, but only have this much time to get them ready. Let's just throw all three at once. Boom. That takes care of that for the day. I at least loaded that tendon and I accomplished some type of loading that I want for the day.
Awesome. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So then you're low. So now remember, we have like 85% of our audience, they're just getting into fitness. Most of what you said is like way over their head. And then we have trainers and coaches, right? That a lot of what you said is like, oh, I got some of that, but then some of it I don't quite get. So to help break that down, I'm hearing, like, okay, we do want to load these tendons. We do want to load these muscles that are going to basically get a ton of impact and of course, the jumper's knee or the Achilles tendons. And what we don't want is weak tendons, right? And weak muscles there. So basically you're saying isometrically loading it is loading it through the tissues, right? Both the tendon and the muscle, to help create adaptation to make it more resilient or make it stronger. Is that sort of the approach? And you're just slowly, progressively overloading through those tissues?
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, I think those are the key words right there. Progressive overload is the name of the game. I mean, obviously on social media, you see stuff all over. Like just kind of there's a lot of crazy videos trying to do things. And I kind of say, it's cool at all. It's challenging, but I'm like, if you have someone worth 30, 40 million, are you really going to have them be doing that? So it's just, I would always kind of put that in the back of your mind. Like, that's cool and all. And I guess they got a bunch of likes or whatever, but I'm like, is this really going to be what you're like, what's your objective there? I always kind of say, like, if you don't have a really objective, it just kind of looks cool. I'm like, and then again, even if you're doing it for yourself, but again, the name of the game, progressive overload, you can't really beat the foundations of strength and conditioning. Like the general lifts, obviously you can get creative working through different planes, different surfaces, XYZ. I'm all for that. But I mean, even some of the stuff I post, like it's probably not your most traditional things, XYZ, just because you kind of see that everywhere. If anyone asks me, probably the stuff I post is probably 10% of what I actually like. Probably 10% of my programming. And programming, again, it's just the foundations of just strength and conditioning, and you just add kind of like a little performance twist to it. That's where, again, working through different planes, different tempos, different, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's so refreshing, and this is one of many interviews now with a doctor, either a DPT or, a doctor in some other realm, where
Hmm.
they're affirming the same things that I think the really good trainers and coaches know as well, which is like brilliance at the basics, right? Stick to the basic
Of course.
movement patterns, stick to and then you can start to explore outside of that with tempos and things like that. So then I want to go back to isometrics, just because I'm obviously that's something that everybody has access to, right? They may not have
Hmm.
access to Graston or dry needling, and obviously you
Of
had to
course,
learn
yeah.
those techniques as well, right? So you had to go and unless do they teach that? Just out of my own curiosity, do they teach that in the physical therapy school that you went to, or was that something that you learned outside of it?
Yeah, that was all during like the physical therapy school. I mean, dry needling. It's not even legal in all states, and it requires like a separate certification and license to do. So I just went ahead and took my part one, part two to
Nice.
get certified to do that, so I can do it for everyone. So again, it's just a lot of times, let's say, like I don't know, like obviously you're not gonna puncture the skin with Graston or any kind of like a hands-on work or whatever. You need to kind of like, let's say, hit a trigger point. Let's say, for example, you can actually like obviously puncture the skin, puncture the muscle. You get that twitch response. So it's just another tool to add to the bag. So
Yeah.
all of that was rehab, recovery, more physical therapy basis.
Hmm.
And then everything else from like strength and conditioning, isometrics, power, et cetera, all those terms, that's more undergrad. Got a
Yeah.
little taste of it in PT school, but that
Yeah.
wasn't really like the focus of PT school. So I mean,
Yeah.
I played a little bit of a role teaching that to the program when I was like the Therex GA, just kind of like, all right, like for those of you who aren't really caught up as far as strength and conditioning, like kind of like basic principles of just progressive overload. But that was something that I know a lot of programs just hope to assume that you have a decent grasp on going
Yeah.
to school, but the reality is not everyone does. There's
Yeah.
sometimes people that go from a communications degree and they do all the prereqs for PT school and they go to PT school, which is nothing wrong with it, but they're like, I just have no background in strength conditioning XYZ. So
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And so then coming back into the isometric, so how do you
mhm.
typically do load there? Are you looking for something in particular when they're doing the isometric to say, okay, yeah, they've fatigued out, or are you just doing purely like time basis, or is it certain amount of sets, or how do you usually load them up and then start that progressive overload when, let's say, you're just doing isometrics, for instance?
Typically just based off time. I mean, unless I'm doing something, I'd say I just want to just do a quick 2 sets and just have them hold until failure or whatever. But typically, yeah, just stick with basic progressive overload principles and apply that to really everything. So whether you're doing concentric, eccentric work or just isometrics, you just reps, yeah, reps, sets, seconds. It all
Yeah.
to me progressive. You just progress. Literally, like the words say it within itself.
Yeah.
Progressively
Right.
overload. Like I'm not just it sounds sarcastic, but it's really like you can't beat that principle though.
Yeah, yeah. So as long as there is some sort of method of progressive, whether it's through reps or through
Yeah.
time or through sets or something like that, you're
Hmm.
just basically slowly increasing time under
Yeah.
tension day over day, week over
Exactly.
week, right? Not like every single hour or some crazy thing like that.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
letting the body recover and all that, right?
Yeah, recovery, adapt, get you ready. Some weeks you're gonna be better than others. Some weeks you might have a crazy high volume on the court or the field, and some weeks you just, let's say you run down a little bit. There's a lot of travel in season, obviously, and then sometimes in off season too. So there's fatigue from that factor. So that's all things that kind of just keep like in the back of my mind. Like, okay, ideally it's gonna happen at X Y Z, but nothing in life is textbook. So gotta
Yeah,
adapt. I mean, there might be something one day where they're just like, I'm not doing the movement today. My legs are shot. I'm not doing this. My glutes or something are shot. Like, there's no shot I'm doing this. And it's like, all right, well, tomorrow's a new day.
yeah, yeah,
So we'll we'll still get the whatever we're in, but we'll just kind of, let's just say that we know XYZ is going to work today. Let's just go to the other options for today then.
And so then obviously in season, you're not trying to smash them. You're not trying to, create all this stress that they have to adapt to. But there's got to be some level and probably give and take too. And I'm guessing it's going to be athlete dependent as well. Like some of them want to maybe work harder. Some of them maybe don't want to work as hard because of what mentally it does for them, come game time or whatnot. But kind of talk through just a little bit of the general differences between your in-season training versus your off-season training.
Yeah, so as you said, it's kind of spot on. It depends on the person, their age, and all the above. I mean, in season, I play more of like the rehab recovery role because again, the team does have like a full strength staff. I'm not a part of the team. So, and then with COVID last year, it was a little bit different too, as far as getting access to the facility. But typically in season, again, you're probably they're so drained from so much travel, especially last year. Let's say game ends at 9:10, you hop on a flight. By the time you get on a flight, it's midnight. You land at 3 a.m. We had COVID testing between 7 and 8. Like guys probably aren't going on a lift. I mean, if they're going on 3-4 hours of sleep, which is also I think a factor of why there's some like a pretty large amount of injuries last year, just lack of sleep and recovery, honestly, with all the COVID testing. They get tested twice a day, every single day for a full season and a jam-packed schedule. But from a standpoint, I mean, typically in season, it's a little bit more short, concise, best bang for your buck. Off season, you kind of focus on more of like, again, I'd say building more muscle, XYZ. I would say more in season, more maintenance, keeping the tendons healthy, XYZ, and just still getting some loading. Like it's still obviously still good to load everything. Yeah. Versus off season, I think that's where you really, if you want to, let's say, put on 15, 20 pounds on someone that's a bit skinnier, that's probably your time. That's going to be your time to do it. You're not going to try to get someone 15, 20 pounds heavier in season because they're going to be just shot on the court. Whether it's their arms, legs, XYZ, and I know I keep saying court, but same for really any sport probably. In season, your lifting volume, I'm sure anyone that even plays any sport, you just know, even from like a high school standpoint, in the off season, you're probably training like crazy, but you have a little bit more time. You can work on specifics. In season, you're probably just doing like just the general maintenance work, trying to stay healthy and kind of in and out of the weight room probably.
Yeah. So, and you're getting COVID tested twice a day as well? Is that because are you able to get around that because you're not in the team? Or
in season for me, it was once a day. It was just the players that was twice a day.
Okay. So, so you probably have like nasal passages that are just totally bored out and like you don't even have any feeling
nose
there
and
anymore
every morning. Nose and throat every single morning,
jammed on. Like doing it once, I'm like, nah, I'm good, like I don't need to do this anymore, like that sucks. No one was too thrilled about that every morning, and then for them every afternoon too. yeah, exactly. And so, but it's a little bit different now. It's not as every day, twice a day, all of that stuff.
I mean, off season, I'm not required to. So I mean, I probably did like early on, but since then, I think maybe once or twice, like randomly, if I think I had to like once or twice. Besides that, and now it's just the travel. But besides that, nah.
And is this
pretty chill?
Is this whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated? And not that we have to get into a crazy debate or anything like that. I'm just out of my own curiosity. Does it matter either or? It's just like we're going to test you. It doesn't matter or.
Yeah, I mean, everyone thought getting vaccinated would kind of, this is really was still like early on, and like the vaccines were becoming available to like everyone on every team. Kind of, you would assume that's like we obviously knew you're still going to get tested, but just not as frequently. But nothing really changed. So no matter what, I mean, I'm assuming this season it'll be, I don't know if it'll be as often, but I'm expecting to get tested relatively frequently again. I'm not a part of the team. I just travel like with them. So it could be different for them versus me. But for me, I stayed at the same team hotel, so I would just do whatever they did, honestly. So I collaborated and communicated with them pretty closely. Yeah.
So we'll talk a little bit just about you personally, as much as you want to. And if you don't want to, you just be like, hey, shut the hell up. No, but so obviously you get to travel quite a bit, and some people think that that's amazing. I thought it was amazing when I was in my 20s, but then I started actually traveling more as I got to 30s and 40s. And I'm like, man, I kind of want to just be at home. Could I just flip flop and like give my young 20s this travel life and then do the less travel now? But what are some of the things that you, traveling a lot, what are some of the things that you enjoy doing that's outside of PT, outside of sports, outside of all that? And do you actually even get time to do anything like that?
So, sometimes, I mean, off season, yes. I mean, we're pretty much just spend times at like kind of like prime locations. Like right now, currently out in LA, so kind of get everything done in the morning. Outside, I mean, again, it's just still kind of like a full time job. As you got there's training the other day, there's rehab, recovery, treatment, nicks, dings come here and there. It's just the nature of just life in sports.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, just like anyone, I just like being outside. So whether it's walk around the city, getting coffee, going to the beach. Haven't really been like, I'm not really a huge fan of the cold climates, so really haven't been around that. I try to avoid that, honestly. So hence kind of being in LA and Miami, honestly. But yeah, I mean, honestly, just exploring different cities. I visited prior to this. I didn't really travel that much. So even like in season, if I do have, and let's say it's freezing outside somewhere, and even Detroit, I at least just walk around a little bit just to see. I mean, it is pretty cool just seeing how different every city is. Because again, prior to this, I was pretty stationary and just Miami. I've always just done school, work, sleep, basically school, work, study, sleep, whatever. So yeah, it's just cool seeing different cities, and yeah, again, nothing too crazy. Nor is there really too much time for me to do a whole lot of stuff outside of what's kind of like what the main focus is from a main athlete.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, obviously that's your full-time gig, and sometimes that becomes a more than just 40 hours a week full-time gig, like you alluded to earlier. Okay, so let's say, I'm sure there's enough trainers and coaches on here, or even people that are aspiring trainers and coaches on here that are like, man, I want that job so bad. What are some of the pieces of advice, or a single piece of advice that you could give, somebody who is looking to do this? What could they do to be in a situation or a position like you're in?
Yeah, so I mean, I think as a lot of people can see, it's pretty more commonplace now for a lot of these like higher contract guys to they just like having their own person. A lot of teams, they just know that's just what comes with some of these like higher contracts guys. Like for example, like the Lakers this year, I'm sure 3/4 of the team has their own personal PT and their own personal trainer just because they've probably worked with them in off seasons or XYZ, or they've dedicated this much time to being with them. So you just kind of know it's coming with it. But at the same time, you just gotta know it's unpredictable. I mean, you could think like I thought I'd say, for example, I was gonna spend like most of my off season in Miami, but we ended up doing two LA trips this past summer. So I was in LA for a month prior to this, or LA and Vegas for summer league, and then we're out here for a month for the leading up going into training camp. So it was just mainly it kind of was just a little bit difficult because I have a business partner back in Miami, so where I thought it was going to be like allocate, let's say, this much time to split the workload. Again, we bounce it back and forth off each other, but he plays a similar role to me, but he does it part-time basically. But you just got to be ready. Anything's unpredictable. Especially if you're doing training, stuff isn't going to be as late, but if you're doing, like for me, my primary role in particular with this player, it's with him, and back in Miami, it's kind of like a split role performance and training, but with the rehab recovery, they're going to want treatment pretty often, especially in season. They're sore, so that goes back to the whole game's end of this time. You fly to the next city, and you probably, let's say, you don't land till 1, 2, maybe even 3 o'clock if you're doing different time zones. I know I'm probably working from maybe 3, 4 until 5, 6 in the morning. I've done that a few times, and then you have to wake up for, let's say, for example, for COVID testing at between 7 and 8. So again, there's just small things that you probably don't see that just goes in everything. A lot of things change day to day, injuries, next things, got to always be ready. The nature of sports, there's things that pop up. Even if you're focusing on one ankle thing, you never know what's going to happen in a game. So you just got to be ready. Like, you don't know, especially if you have anyone that's a player that's more injury prone, less injury prone, XYZ. It's just, you don't know what's going to get thrown at you. If someone gets like something bad or even remotely, you got to be ready. All right, no, this is what's happened. This is how we're going to deal with it. This is how we're going to get on the court tomorrow. This is how you're going to feel better in a few hours. And then just got to keep them positive. So, I mean, you're going through like a tough season where there are nicks and dings or a team isn't winning XYZ, you also play a role of just keeping that person and like the best positive mindset, whether it's you yourself and like around a group of people. So usually all these guys have a few groups of people, so just keeping them positive throughout the year too. So
Yeah.
and also, like I said, there's obviously, I know it sounds like that's like a bunch of things that are negative, but it's just more so things to just be aware of. I mean, there's so many perks to it as well. I mean, I'm around some of the best athletes pretty much year round, whether it's work or just like a social setting. So that's obviously cool. It's just connect with that, connect with different strength coaches, other physical therapists in the profession, whether it's NBA, NFL, with teams like private ones, because it's similar to myself. So it's opened like tons of doors like that as well. So I mean, there's so much more that's just like it's not like a job title, but you just like it's just naturally going to come with it, just because of who and where you travel with. So
yeah. And would you say, obviously, your undergrad and your grad work, right, in PT school, played into this, but then would you say that some of that was where you interned and who you interned with, and is there a way to try to make that happen, or what is
so
what do
I
you think?
mean, being in Miami definitely helps, honestly. Like again, all these, you have like off-season hubs for players, whether it's like Miami, LA, New York, Arizona, Houston. You just got some big cities where there's maybe a lot of guys there. So that definitely, I can't sugarcoat it, that definitely helps just being in the area. But I got involved with the training room at pretty early on. I think that's probably important, just getting used to working with high level collegiate athletes, because again, there are even those guys. And then like I said, I did an NFL driven internship too, which was huge, because these guys come at you and they know that sometimes a lot of times they have no idea if you're a PT, if you're an intern, XYZ. They just probably assume everyone's just taking care of them. They're going to ask you. They can ask you 20 questions. You better be ready to answer, because if you kind of hesitate and you don't really know, or you're holding their leg and if you're kind of shaking, or you're doing something, you're hesitant, this person's literally is paying you to take care of their body. I mean, that's what they do for a living. They're probably not going to see you tomorrow. They're probably going to walk in the door and probably go to the table next to you and see the person that's like your coworker next to you and be like, you probably that's probably your last time working with them. So confidence is definitely key. And if you don't have an answer now, give them something that's safe to do. And you better figure it out overnight and then get back to them tomorrow and have that answer, because the last thing you want to do is be like pretty hesitant and shaky in front of these guys, because that's, again, sometimes they take a one shot and whatever, you don't do your job right. They have so many other resources. They know people in pretty much every city. They'll find someone else in a snap of a finger.
Yeah, I think that's massively helpful. And I think it was helpful that you talked through like, hey, I'm not going to, it's super cool, but it also comes with its own issues and problems. And just like, it is like anything in life, everybody
that's any
thinks,
job. There's pros and cons to anything.
Exactly. Everybody thinks grass is greener on the other side until they get over there and like, oh man, I'm in the same crappy grass. What happened? Just
again, tons of upsides, tons of things that you just got to just learn to deal with. Again, awesome experience. I wouldn't have traded for anything. I think I'd probably say, as far as sports, going to PT school, I feel like so many people want to do sports. They did some volunteering in the training room, and they're like, oh hell no. They're like, to wake up at 5 a.m., be working with people that are drenched in sweat, they come off the field doing a training camp that could be, the day starts at 5 a.m. and let's say that they're not done with film and stuff until 10 p.m. or treatment or XYZ. And then you do like the same thing for just nonstop, day in, day out, just sweating your ass out, and Miami Heat every day on the field. These players, some people do that. They do 2 days of it, and they're like, "Nah, there is no shot. I'm trying to do this for a living. I want a regular, go to work 8 or 9, be done by 4 or 5, and then I can just tell you, if you want anything sports, even my off season, I get calls. I mean, I've gotten calls at like 11 o'clock on like a Friday. Hey, like, what's up? What are you doing? I'm just like, I'm just like anyone. I'm at a bar or something, or I'm whatever. But I mean, yeah, I can probably help you now, or I can come tomorrow morning or something. So you just gotta be the unpredictability. Some of these guys, they kind of just live in their own little time zone or whatever.
Yeah.
Again, that's the nature of the season, though. I mean, that's their job to take care of their body. So even though it might seem abnormal to kind of the everyday person, for them, that's just pretty normal. It's just how they function, and they just got to take care of their body 24/7. If they're super sore or feeling this way, they're probably going to hit up the person that they trust the most, and just some sacrifices got to be made, whether it's family, friends, XYZ. So
yeah. So before we do the final question, we ask all of our guests, what is Living Fit? Have you been able to hold a relationship during all of this chaotic travel and all that? Yeah. Tight. Well,
I have. Yeah. I wouldn't say I wouldn't say she loves it.
Oh yeah.
But no, I've been able to make it work.
That's awesome. Well, we wish you all the best, or I wish you all the best in that, because I know, being a Marine, like, and being gone or whatever, I know how hard that is on relationships. Mm-hmm. So, and obviously it's two different things, but it's also the same in that you're just gone so much and there's so much demand from you. So I appreciate that. And yeah, so what is, from your perspective and working with, all these super high level athletes, and also really understanding rehab and recovery, as well as performance, and as well as like just brilliance at the basics, what is Living Fit to you?
Yeah, so I mean, in short, you have one body, and you got to take care of it, and I mean, there's no other way around it. So from that's everything, from like an emotional standpoint, physical, mental, pretty much every standpoint you can think of, is just staying well rounded and just taking care of yourself. I mean, a healthy work life, healthy physical active life, a healthy social life. I think all those play a big factor. If you dive way too much into partying into the social life, you kind of forget about XYZ. You just do everything work, which I think I'm more at fault of sometimes. I just kind of get too headstrong into being available from sometimes 5 a.m. until who knows, at midnight. I just said it's only work, but it's kind of finding, like I said, that balance where even just got to block out time. You know what? Today, this is my time to talk to like a loved one, family, XYZ. And so I think it's just Living Fit is just being as well rounded. And again, you have one body, take care of it from every single standpoint. Yeah. Not just physically.
Yeah, I love that. I love that for sure. Yeah, because it's more than just physical. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Zach Colls, I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm super pumped that our technology held together with duct tape and hopes and dreams. So thank you so much for being on the Living Fit Show. Thank you again.
Hey, for more interviews like that, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, if you're looking for not only those interviews, but follow along programs, exercise breakdowns, workouts, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for your fitness results, make sure you hop on to Living.Fit, become a member today, and I'll see you on the next one.